Let's get into our first finger-licking good story, shall we? First up, we have Japan, and we all know Japan as the weird place of the world, but instead of something weird, we have something more wholesome today. Wholesome for the capitalist. Takashi Okiwara was hired as a store manager for the first real KFC in Japan, and it flopped. Okiwara was actually sleeping on sacks of flour in the back. That's how poorly things were going. A local school nun for a school who was part of Okiwara's network asked him if he could dress as Santa and entertain the kids. He went and he started singing and dancing and even pulled out a bucket of fried chicken, going, Kentucky Christmas, happy, happy. And the kids liked it. A while later, another school asked him to do the same thing, and this gave him the idea to make a Christmas-themed bucket. Finally, he started seeing some success. As the Christmas bucket spread, he was interviewed and asked if fried chicken is a traditional American meal, and despite knowing that it wasn't, and that turkey is, he said yes, selling the idea to the Japanese that eating fried chicken is a traditional American Christmas meal. And it worked wonderfully. And now, KFC is a staple Christmas meal in Japan, and thus, Colonel Sanders now has a place in Japanese history. Being the face of KFC, he's the food mascot for Christmas, basically. Speaking of traditions brought on by the ever-turning years of capitalism, next up we have pickles on trees. It's not fully known where this came from, but legend has it that Germans hide pickles on their Christmas trees, and on Christmas morning, the first kid to find it either gets an extra present or gets to open their presents first. Most Germans probably don't actually know about the German pickle tradition, because it probably wasn't real. I'll explain, but let's indulge in a few other origin stories first, shall we? One was that they didn't have any ornaments, so they used pickles. Another was that a Bavarian soldier fighting in the American Civil War who, on his deathbed, asked for a pickle as his last meal and afterwards miraculously got better. This take implies it's an American-German tradition, explaining why Germans aren't very aware of it. The most extreme pickle origin story was that Santa saved 2 boys from being pickled to death. But what most likely happened was an ornament maker came up with the tradition in order to sell more pickle ornaments. Ah, yes, the classic tactic of selling something to a country, claiming they're traditional in another country. Just like buckets of fried chicken. Oh, speaking of buckets, you're going to need a bucket of water to cool down this next hot subject I have for you. The gavle goat is a goat in Gavletown in Sweden. Made from straw, it stands around 30 to 40 feet high. A group of Gavle locals come together every year to build this giant goat, and while it's entirely illegal to burn down this goat, someone did, and then another did. And then at that point, it basically became tradition. Out of the 60 years they've had the goat around, only like 18 goats have survived. The stories of people burning it down are also, fire. So allow me to share some. In 1966, the first year it was constructed, it burned down. The year after, it survived. And the year after also survived. But the next 12 consecutive years, it was destroyed. In 1970, it was burned down 6 hours after construction. In 1976, it was hit by a Volvo Amazon and collapsed. In 1979, the goat was burned down before construction even finished. In 2000, the gavle goat burned down and the small goat that was also built nearby was thrown into a river. In 2001, the goat burned down from a visitor from Ohio. He was an Ohio tourist. That explains it. Who was arrested for burning the goat. He claimed he was told by people that it was perfectly okay. In 2005, a man dressed as Santa and another dressed as a gingerbread man used a bow to shoot flaming arrows to burn it down. In 2009, security cameras were subject to a denial of service hack attack and it was subsequently burned down. In 2010, a helicopter kidnapping attempt was made where 2 men tried bribing a security guard with $7,350 to look the other way while they come in with a helicopter to take it to Stockholm. That obviously didn't work out too well since it was only an attempt. Stupid spoiling keyword. But it's still a neat little fact about the goat. It's such a devious prank, I can't help but give credit to the mad lads for trying. Imagine it just disappears and reappears 100 miles away in another town. I mean, talk about stealing Christmas. Very immoral. Whoever the frick decided to conduct that straw goat heist needs to be reminded that God knows your sins and will judge you accordingly. It is Christmas season after all. I think we all need to be reminded of God this season. So keep Christ in Christmas. Speaking of Christ, did you know in the Nativity, in some countries, it's tradition to have a person squatting down taking a fat dookie? Well, it is. The Cagner is a person defecating near baby Jesus. Oh, and I'd like to take this as an opportunity to remind you, always be prepared to die, so you don't get caught by Jesus with your pants down. I don't care if Jesus sees my balls. Speaking of poop, the cagatillo. Get it? Log? Poop? Okay. The cagatillo, or Christmas log, is a Catalonian tradition, just like the Cagner. In early December, you bring in a log and take good care of it. Put a blankie on him, keep him warm and cozy, feed him nuts and fruit, and generally take good care of him. You see, you don't do this without a purpose either. You do it to fatten him up. And then when Christmas comes around, while doing various songs and dances, the kids beat him with sticks, and afterwards you lift the blanket and reveal all kinds of treats and candies that he defecated out. Yum. Some say they used to put part of the log into the fire, but since not many modern homes have fireplaces anymore, it was replaced with just stick beatings. Plus, the same Tio could be subjected to the same treatment year after year. This is how I imagine some Tio beatings to go. Ring around the rosies, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes. The Tio burns down. Number 5, Elf on the Shelf. In some countries, parents put an elf on the shelf in December. The elf moves around the house and watches the children, so it can return back to the North Pole and tell Santa how naughty or nice you've been. Having an elf watch me in my bedroom to tell an old man in the north about my private deeds does not sound fun at all. My private deeds are supposed to remain as private deeds. I don't like my private deeds becoming public deeds. Last but not least, we have the Yule cat in Iceland, which is a giant cat who typically stays up in the mountains. It's important to get a new outfit for the Christmas season, because around the Christmas season, this giant cat decides to discriminate against poor children that don't get new clothes by eating them. Finally, an effective poverty reduction policy. Anyway, that's all I have for now, guys and gals. Goodbye.